Chapter 8. All right, so 8 and 9 are combined. Navya chitta kinchit karamati yukto manyeta tattva svit pasyain shrivan spursan jigran asan gachan svapan savan pralapan visharan gurnan unmisan timisan api Indriya Arthasu Vartantha Iti Dariyan. At the beginning of that text 8 Sanskrit, only because I read a Dr. Seuss book this week, I felt like I was reading a Dr. Seuss Sanskrit. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving out, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening, and closing the eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. A person in Krishna consciousness is pure in his existence, and consequently, he has nothing to do with any work, which depends upon 5 immediate and remote causes: the doer, the work, the situation, the endeavor, and fortune. This is because he is engaged in the loving transcendental service of the Lord, of Krishna. Although he appears to be acting with his body and senses, he is always conscious of the actual position, which is spiritual engagement. In material consciousness, the senses are engaged in sense gratification, but in Krishna consciousness, the senses are engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is always free, even though he appears to be engaged in things of the senses. Activities such as seeing, hearing, speaking, evacuating, etc. are actions of the senses meant for work. A Krishna conscious person is never affected by the actions of the senses. He cannot perform any act in the service of the Lord because he knows that he is the eternal. He cannot perform any act except in the service of the Lord because he knows that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord. Shloka 10. Brahmani adhyaya karmani sagam tayakatafa karoti ya libiyate nasa papena padma patram ivambasa. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme God, is not affected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Here, Brahmani means Krishna consciousness, means in Krishna consciousness. The material world is a sum total manifestation of the 3 modes of material nature, technically called the pradhana. The Vedic hymns, Sarvam etad Brahma, Tasmad etad Brahma, Nama Rubam Anam Chagyate, and in the Bhagavad Gita, Mama Yonar Mamad Mahad Brahma, indicate that everything in the material world is the manifestation of Brahman, And although the effects are differently manifested, they are non-different from the cause. In the Isopanishad, it is said that everything is related to the Supreme Brahman or Krishna, and thus everything belongs to him only. Only one who knows perfectly well that everything belongs to Krishna, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that, therefore, everything is engaged in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of his activities, whether virtuous or sinful. Even one's material body, being a gift of the Lord for carrying out a particular type of action, can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is beyond contamination by sinful reactions, exactly as the lotus leaf, though remaining in the water, is not wet. The Lord also says in the Gita, Mayi sarvani karmani sannyasa, resign all works unto me, Krishna. The conclusion is that a person without Krishna consciousness acts according to the concept of the material body and senses, but a person in Krishna consciousness acts according to the knowledge that the body is the property of Krishna and should therefore be engaged in the service of Krishna. Shloka 11. Kayena manasa buddha yaya, kavalar indriyer api, yogana karma kuvanti, sagnam tayaktvatma sudhai. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with the body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification. By acting in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the senses of Krishna, any action, whether of the body, mind, intelligence, or even the senses, is purified of material contamination. There are no material reactions resulting from the activities of a Krishna conscious person. Therefore, purified activities, which are generally called sadachara, are easily performed by acting in Krishna consciousness. Sri Rupa Goswami, in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sidhu, describes as follows: Aya yasya harar dasye karmana manasa gira nikhilasva api avastasu jiva mukta cha yukatai. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person even within the material world, although he may be engaged in many so-called material activities. He has no false ego, nor does he believe that this is the material body, nor does that he possesses the body. He knows that he is not this body and that this body does not belong to him. He himself belongs to Krishna, and the body too belongs to Krishna. When he applies everything produced of the body, mind, intelligence, words, life, wealth, etc., whatever he may have within his possession to Krishna's services, he is at once dovetailed with Krishna. He is one with Krishna and is devoid of the false ego that leads one to believe that he is the body. This is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. Sloka 12. Yukta karma phalam tayaktva santam apinoti nastikim ayukta kama karina fali saktu nibadanyati. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, become entangled. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person. And works for him only is certainly a liberated person. And he is not anxious for fruitive rewards. In the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the results of an activity is explained as being due to one's functioning in the consumption of duality, that is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no.
Hey Siri, what time is it?
Oh, wait, hold on, Domenica. You're on, not on mute. Scared me. Therefore, hold on. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness. One who is, however, entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification cannot have that peace. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness, realization that there is no existence besides Krishna in the platform of peace and fearlessness. Sloka 13. Sarva karmani manasa sanyasayasti sukam vasi nava darvi pure dehe nava karvan na karayan. When the embodied living beings controls his nature and mentally renounces all activities, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done. The embodied soul lives in the city of 9 gates. The activities of the bodies, or the figurative city of the body, are conducted automatically by the particular modes of nature. The soul, although subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, can be beyond those conditions if he so desires. Owing only to forgetfulness of his superior nature, he identifies with the material body and therefore suffers. By Krishna consciousness, he can revive his real position and thus come out of his embodiment. Therefore, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one at once becomes completely aloof from bodily activities. In such a controlled life, in which his deliberations are changed, he lives happily within the city of 9 gates. The 9 gates are described as follows. Nava Davari Puri Dehe Hamso, Lelayate Baha, Basi Sarvasya, Lokasya, Stithava Rasya, Karasya Cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within the body of a living entity, is the controller of all the living entities all over the universe. The body consists of 9 gates, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 1 mouth, the anus, and the genital. The living entity in his conditioned stage identifies himself with the body, but when he identifies himself with the Lord within, he becomes just as free as the Lord, even while in the body. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is free from both the outer and inner activities of the material body. Sloka 14. Na kartvam na karmani lokasya sarjati prabhu na karma phala samyoganam sabhavastu pravartati tat. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of actions. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. The living entity, as will be explained in the 7th chapter, is one in nature with the Supreme Lord. Distinguished from matter, which is another nature called inferior of the Lord, somehow the superior nature, the living entity, has been in contact with the material nature since time immemorial. The temporary body or material dwelling place which he obtains is the cause of various activities and their resultant reactions. Living in such a conditional atmosphere, one suffers the results of the activities of the body by identifying himself in ignorance with the body. It is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress. As soon as the living entity becomes aloof from the activities of the body, he becomes free from the actions as well. As long as he is in the city of the body, he appears to be the master of it. But actually, he's neither its proprietor nor controller of its actions and reactions. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. The waves of the ocean are tossing him, and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil. I will pause here. Domenic, you scared me when I think you asked your son what time it was. You asked someone what time it was, and I was in my head, so it like pulled me back. But I was like, why is she yelling in the middle of a paragraph?
I have to make sure my son is up for classes. That's what I was doing.
Yeah, I know, but
Sorry.
It said that they can interrupt me, but I didn't realize it would be like right there. But it was a good distraction because I was floating somewhere else, and it pulled me right back.
I didn't realize I wasn't on mute. I do have a question though. Is the goal, and maybe this was read at some point, for everybody to be this Krishna consciousness person, or is it that there's a couple of people? I just don't see how society, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too much. I can't understand how society would work if everybody was in this Krishna consciousness state of mind. I don't know. I'm probably overthinking it.
I don't know the answer to that, and I can see what I can. Yeah, and I hear what you're asking.
Right.
In Kali Yuga, which is the time that we're in, and the energy is kind of heavy, so less people are aware of that universal energy. But when this was written, it was written for us knowing that the energy was going to change. In the last yoga, like Vedanta means the end, or it's like the end of the time. So at the end of that last time, where more people were enlightened and more people were aware of this universal consciousness, the society was run very differently, and more people were. And then the time before that, even more people were, and the time before that, most people were.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, when we got to the 9 gates thing, I turned around, and we have bookshelves all over the house, but in this little space, I have books that I either intend to read or that I go to every once in a while. And look what was there. Remember how he was talking about 9 gates?
Oh my goodness, how funny.
Yeah. This
Oh,
is a
weird.
book about poetry and reading poetry and how poetry affects the body and affects your brain. And it's written by Jane Hirschfield, who's a poet herself. And I just thought that was really interesting. And I didn't get to the part where she refers to the 9 gates, but I'm sure she does. Anyway.
Well,
Sort of like yesterday, we were talking about transcendentalism, as you mentioned earlier, Pam. And sure enough, I'm reading this one science fiction novel to try to help me to write better science fiction. And there's Ralph Waldo Emerson again in this novel. And I thought, oh, okay. So that means I better read some of that stuff again. Anyway, it's so interesting.
It's interesting when you have your mindset on doing something, Sue, and you're like, I'm going to focus on this, but the universe is telling you otherwise. Like, no, you're gonna do it my way.
That's right.
You're not doing it your way. It's
It like taps you on the shoulder and says, excuse me, but no.
like he might as well just be there tapping you on the shoulder, like, you're gonna read my works again.
Yeah, exactly. So I downloaded some of Emerson's essays, which are like the basic things to read. And I thought, okay, just read them, get it over with.
I think that's so funny when that stuff happens. Like, we're always fighting those signs, but like once we surrender to them,
Yeah.
we're like, oh, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yep. I'll let you know. Anyway.
I am still stuck on this transcendental. So even when we just read this second to last, the best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. I feel like if you are Krishna consciousness, by definition, you are transcending. So is it like when they say transcendental Krishna consciousness, do they need to put the word transcendental there? Or is there a reason why there would be transcendental Krishna consciousness versus just Krishna consciousness? Like, that's where I get stuck on the word.
Are you saying that once you're in Krishna consciousness, you've already transcended? So why is it called transcendental Krishna consciousness?
Yeah, like, can you be in Krishna consciousness without having transcend?
That's what Maya means.
Maya?
Maya is illusion. There's that illusory nature to the material. So we forget our true nature, that we are part of this, like that we're sitting in this dream of consciousness. We forget, we think we're something else. So transcendence is just a remembering. I think we talk about that a lot in training, where you're just learning to remember. Like everybody's already enlightened, they just forgot.
Yeah. But I get that. But I guess I'm just asking is like, why do they put the word transcendental in front of Krishna consciousness?
I feel like things go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's like the same, right?
I feel like it's an adjective.
Oh, an adjective. Yeah, transcendental Krishna consciousness. I'm also trying to do what Amanda does with this and make it universal. I forget what she calls it, like universal energy, instead of Lord and Krishna, and personalizing it while I'm reading this. So, and it's making it easier to transcend to universal energy versus transcend to a stick figure that's in my head.
The one judgment I made during your reading was, I wish they would stop referring to, the one God, like the Krishna, and just say the universe. I think I'd like that better.
I mean, I could try to change the words, but one, I feel like we're meant to be reading it the way he's telling us this in the Bhakti tradition, and we can just like flip it in our own head. And my brain might not be able to do it as much, because he refers to Krishna in so many different ways. He says supreme, and sometimes he'll say Krishna, and then he'll say like supreme personality of Godhead and the Lord. Like it changes.
I was asking Amanda that in class, because I'm reading all these different texts, and I'll read Brahman, or I read Moksha, or I read Atman, and I feel like they all mean supreme or the highest level, and then it gets a little confusing.
Yeah.
Well, it manifests in different forms. So like my mother calls me daughter, My daughter calls me mother. My husband calls me wife. Right? It's kind of the same idea with the different ways that it manifests. To understand the different attributes of it, it gets different names.
Oh, I thought they all meant the same thing.
Well, I am the same thing, aren't I?
Yes.
You know, it's really interesting if you read about that, what you were talking about, Amanda, it's relational interactions. And so the nature of your interaction can be framed in a relational way, but that's not only what it is. It depends on the interactions with, you know, when you're talking about familial relations, it depends on where you stand within the family, but where you stand within the family differs depending on a different family member's perspective. So the same thing is true when they talk about time. And you know, the whole concept of before and after, which really just exists in your mind, and it's all relational. It depends on your point of view at in that particular space right then and there. And then it changes the next space you happen to be in. And space can mean a lot of different things. It's such an interesting thing. And I think, you know, all of these different names and all of these different beings are, you know, it's almost like you have a multifaceted diamond. And if you look at it in one way, you see one of the beings. If you look at it in another way, you see a different being. It's actually kind of beautiful, the whole thought of it.
The way you frame it, it's very beautiful.
Why, thank you.
That's what
I'm
makes,
holding a book about poetry. It's
oh
awesome.
yeah. You're in that mode. So Alexandra, that's why it's kind of ridiculous when it's like a misunderstanding when these particular priests say things like yoga's worshiping the devil. It's because they're looking at it and from a very surface level, and they don't understand that it's the same idea of this oneness, right? They think that because there are all these different names that it's like idol worship, but they don't get that it's actually all the same thing because they haven't studied it. Though I've met Christian priests who have studied all the religions and they get it. They don't look at this as devil worship. They look at it as another form of like the same thing. So those people are very I don't know, they're very angry. You just got to be aware of them. They're the ones causing a lot of trouble in the world. Any religion that starts to make you think that there's a separateness between you and another person is going to cause division, war, you know, and that's never what the intention of what Jesus wanted. That's never what the intention was. And the whole basis is, you know, of Christianity is based on the teachings of Jesus. It's very silly to me.
I agree wholeheartedly. That's why it was like 200-300 people in this church, dead quiet. And I was like holding myself back from screaming up and saying, what if some child in here, you know, has a different sexuality? What are you saying to them? They can't be loved by us or by you? I was so angry. I like held myself back. And then I go back 2 weeks later. And I don't think he meant it that we worship the devil. I just think he meant like anything that's not our religion is the devil's work, you know? So it was, I never want to go there again. I never want to be around this man again. And I feel terrible that he has such a big parish.
A lot of people in America are teaching those kinds of things. A lot of people. You know, you just have to figure it out for yourself. There are yogis who teach that kind of stuff too, that like anyone who's not following my way is, you know, bad, or, you know, and it's just, it's not what the basis of the teachings of any of these religions actually teaches. It's like, it's through the lens of materialism, in my opinion. It's just like mired in illusion. And one day, hopefully they come out of it, you know, we're all rolling towards the same direction and they're having some kind of experience because of their karma that they're trying to learn. But yeah, the whole thing with the LGBTQ, like in the Vedic, in the Vedic tradition, in Native American traditions. Like, it was always just a part of the human population. There's never there's never anything abominable about it. It's just like a natural thing of being human. That's it. It's ridiculous that anybody would say that there was something, because you'll get it even in Hindu sects that they'll say like, oh no, it needs to be between a man and a woman so you could have a child, like in current Hindu sects. But I've read things that like way back when it wasn't considered that. I don't know. That might be controversial what I'm saying, but it's silly to me. People are wild.
We're having Pride for Youth host the Rev Ripples conversation this month. They're a subcommittee of the Long Island Crisis Center. So I'm excited to learn more about what the work they're doing on Long Island, because that's definitely something I need to learn more about.
I have a quick question for Amanda about yoga teacher training. Sorry, I just want to know, Amanda, are we starting at 10 o'clock with you this Sunday?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, let's do some breath because I gotta let Kramer out to pee. Oh, my blocks aren't over here. Okay, so we'll nice and yeah, he woke up.
Oh.
Sitting up nice and tall, breathing in and out through the nose. Taking a few breaths in, lengthening the breath in, deepening it out, relaxing the face. And bring your right hand over to your nose. Close the right nostril with the thumb. Inhale through the left. Close the left with the ring finger. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close right. Exhale left. Continuing on a few more breaths. To finish up, whichever breath you're working on, I'm going to set the timer and you'll join us when you're ready. If you need to set your own timer, go for it. Bringing hands to your heart center. Namaste.
Namaste, Pam.